You are absolutely in the right place at the right time. You are here with us on TMC today. Listen, we got a star-studded cast today, man. We've got over here, we've got Elaine Spruill, we've got Elizabeth Dennis, and we've got my man Pots and Pans. We've got Lothario Vanish. He's not the mayor of Steeler Nation today, per se. You know, we're gonna hold that title, you know, until we have a football show. But you know, we're here talking today. The title of the show today is "Guilty as Charged: America's Day in Court." So get settled back. We're gonna play the promo, and we're gonna be back with some good stuff in just a second. Once again, you're in the right place at the right time. Listen, all that good artwork is by my buddy Ortega Missouri. On Facebook, he's Mr. Show Me Art. I'm telling you, and the picture behind me is a picture I saw also. And so he makes, I mean, he has awesome art. Derek Chauvin has been found guilty on all 3 counts for the death of George Floyd. Guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. At a time when America is so divided, can this somehow bring us together? And before we get into questions, we're going to go back to the sidebar conversation that we were having earlier. It was lightning in a bottle. We don't want to miss it. We're going to go ahead and drop it back into Margaret and Elaine Spruill and back to Lothario. So we were talking about how America was perceiving George Floyd and how they was trying to paint him.
Margaret, did you want to go?
No, you go ahead.
Not everybody at one time.
Okay. It was very unfortunate the way they perceived George Floyd. They definitely tried to highlight what they thought as was drug use or addictions, or even try to say he was being non-compliant, which was ridiculous. And the key thing in it is whether somebody has addictions, issues, is guilty of whatever they're being charged with or not. Everybody deserves to be alive. Okay, no one should die in police custody. And I think it's very unfortunate because we see that a lot in media, especially with people of color. I can always say, when I see a crime, if they don't say what color the person is, they're usually Caucasian. Okay. And there's always this thing where it's a culture almost where they like to dig up things from people of color's past and paint this picture of the person to justify the actions of police brutality. So it was very heart-wrenching as I watched a video of this man just putting his knee on his neck with no remorse, almost looking as if he didn't even have a soul, hearing the man cry out for his life, bystanders crying out uh, for their lives, and just having no remorse or care for what he was doing. And I think that although I'm happy that, and I do count it a victory that the officer, well, I just say that he's a monster. I don't even want to give him the title of officer because I know a lot of officers who do what they're supposed to do, right? But just the fact that he just did not care, abused his power, and at the end of the day, even though he was charged with those 3 counts, a man is still dead. Children still don't have their father. You know, someone's fiance doesn't have them. That's someone's brother, father, uncle, as you said. So uh, it's nothing that can be done to bring that individual back, regardless of whether justice is served or not. And I'm hopeful that, because we've kind of seen this time and time before, and honestly, I was really shocked that that was the verdict, because we've seen this before, unfortunately, where we haven't been as victorious, right? Cops are kind of used, well, crooked cops, let me say that, I don't want to put everybody in the same boat, but crooked cops are used to abusing, exploiting, mishandling, whatever you want to call it, of Black people. And this has happened not just cops, but on a broader scale. Black lives have never mattered since the history of this land, and although we're making progress, it still doesn't matter to the same esteem of our counterparts, even in present times. So I think it was eye-opening, and I felt that the verdict was necessary, because of the movement that has transpired as a result of George Floyd. If you guys remember a year ago, we had 3 back to back. We had George, we had Aubrey, we had Rihanna, and it was all back to back. And it invoked the Black Lives Matter movement. So I feel like if they had a different outcome, people would have definitely been enraged, and it would have caused all types of chaos. So I'm hoping that they will, going forward, give him the proper sentencing that he deserves, which, in my opinion, there's nothing that the law, within the law, that they can give him that I feel would be a proper sentence. It'd be great if the family can just return the favor and stand on his neck until he passed away, is my opinion. But even going further, I'm hoping that they'll do the right thing as far as sentencing, because we've seen that where we've been victorious as far as getting a ruling, and then the sentencing was not fair.
Yeah,
So it was very disheartening, the picture that they tried to create in order to justify the behavior. There's absolutely nothing that could be said about the man that would have resulted in, or should have resulted in, the loss of his life.
I agree. Totally agree. Chief Ellison said that he would not call this verdict justice because justice implies true restoration, but is an accountability, which is a step towards justice, and that we must make enduring systematic socialite change, which I agree with, because I've always said you have to start in the courthouse with the judges. The jury can go in there, and most chances in a system like this, they pad the jury to where the verdict goes against us. But at this point, this jury did the right thing, I believe, and that opinion is never going to change. But when it comes back to sentencing, according to legal policies of the sentencing, I don't think that he's going to get the 40 years that it could carry. Um, and I think we need to be prepared for that as a nation and get ready for it, because right now the judge's final saying basically gave him a route to take an appeal, and they're trying to say that his trial was not fair because of Maxine Waters. telling the people that if the verdict came back as an acquittal, that we need to still stand in the streets. Well, she was not in the courtroom. She never had contact with the jury. She was not a part of the legal team. So I don't think that they should use that as an acquittal, because now they're saying, well, the verdict could be overturned because of that. That is going to spark an outroar again. It's crazy, the way that they're doing things, and I don't think that it should be done that way. I don't care if they say that he had drugs in his system. When you looked at the videos showed that that was not why he died. It did not even show that it had the drugs in his system. So, like you said, the fact is this man carelessly took it upon himself to do something the way that he wanted to do it and didn't want to listen to nothing that nobody had to say. Even his officer that stood there beside him, the white officer that told him to let him up because he could not breathe, he still didn't listen to him. There's a paramedic standing on the side that told her to let her intervene and let her check him. He didn't want to listen to that. He had a vendetta that he was set out to do. And because of that, he should have been held guilty from the day one. He should have never went on administrative leave. He should have been taken in custody right away. I think that he should get the maximum sentence. And I understand why they did not try to go for the maximum sentence, because of the way that they would have had to try to prove the first degree murder. And there was a chance that it would have gotten thrown out. So I'm glad that they did get the 3 counts that they did get. And I think that he really deserved to get a whole lot more. Nobody, him, not Brianna, not anybody, should have to die in the fate that they died in.
Absolutely. Before I get to you, Lothario, Princess Gadsden's out there. She says hello. She's a participant and an avid watcher. Tony Gibbs. And Tony, I did send you the link. If you're watching, check. I did send you the link. Tony says we need to keep in mind that he did a plea with AG Barr, but he didn't accept it because he wanted to go to federal prison for 10 years. Okay. Lothario, getting back to you next, brother.
So I think the way that you look at the George Floyd case kind of says a lot about you. So if you don't believe that unarmed blacks have an issue with police brutality, and that a lot of times they are the reason that these things escalate, then you don't see George Floyd as a person. You see him as somebody who was unruly. He was committing a crime. He's a black man, and that has always been a racist America's problem. A racist America is very good at blaming the victim. They blame the Native Americans, they blame the Japanese, they blame the Chinese, they blame the Africans. So if you believe that this country is for you and that it is doing the right thing by minorities, then you don't see George Floyd. You just see a big, unruly, dark-skinned black man. If you are a person that believes that George Floyd was murdered, then you understand that it doesn't matter if he had drugs in the system, if he was committing a crime. For the people who are taking oath to protect and to serve, all you got to do is apprehend the man, which he was in custody, and let the legal system take care of it. But, Derek Chauvin and the Minneapolis Police Department, they didn't see that. So it is a typical narrative how you always blame the victims. And if you don't think that America has a police brutality problem, then everything is fine. Everything is fine. So, yeah, the media is really good at portraying people, because the media has to sell their story to an audience. And depending on what you want to believe or what you think about America, you listen to certain syndicates. So it's interesting. He was murdered. Everybody could see that he was murdered. And so there's no way to make this paint, look pretty.
No.
Thank you. We got Brother Tony Gibbs. He's joining us now. Brother Tony, let me ask you a question. What we're talking about is how America tried to portray George Floyd.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear you.
Yeah, we're talking about how America tried to portray George Floyd.
Well, what they did, they tried to attack his character first. That was the first thing, because there was no doubt in anyone's mind what they saw on TV was murder and horror. So there was nothing that you can do. That's why I said in the message earlier, right after this happened, Attorney General Barr received a plea deal from him, in which he said that there were some things that Attorney General Barr didn't agree with, and that was sending him to a federal prison. He wanted to go to a federal prison for 10 years. And the plea was shut down because he was like, wait a minute, this is too soon to say, wait a minute, we've already got a plea. And he knew that would cause an uproar. So he turned that plea deal down. And that's why you could see the look on his face on yesterday when he got the guilty plea. He was shocked because he didn't think that was going to happen, that a jury of his peers would find him guilty. But all the evidence were there from the prosecution, and the prosecution did a great job.
Yes.
Oh man, Blackwell was masterful. Blackwell was masterful, and I want to throw my 2 cents in on that one too. It amazed me how they were trying to villainize, George Floyd, and I was like, there's few things in my life that, and especially as adults, we've seen things in life. I think to me, 0 hour is death in your family. To me, that's 0 hour. Having to plan a funeral and losing someone close. That's 0 hour. I didn't even know I could cry until someone close to me had died. So I'd seen so many things and attended been around so much grief that it wasn't until I always knew about racism. I always knew about the predatory policing, but it wasn't until I saw Walter Scott running for his life, and this guy guns down Walter Scott, and I said to my barber, I said, "Do you know?" I was getting my hair cut, and I said, "Mackie, if that guy didn't take the videotape, I would have probably been here sitting in your chair today saying, man, Walter shouldn't have tried to take the guy weapon." You know what I mean? Because just the credibility that we lent to the police at one time, the kind of credibility we would give them. And when I saw this guy kneel on this man's neck for all that time, and I said, they murdered Philando Castile on TV, and I said, they choked Eric Garner, and he said, I can't breathe. And this guy is kneeling on his neck, and his facial expression never changed. I said, this guy is a sociopath. And it's crazy how they'll take things like that and try to take the man's character to cover up that mess. And the thing was, he was murdered. There wasn't anything you can say. That was homicide. He was murdered. And we just got to stop and say, I think her name is what? Darnella Frazier. Am I right? And she's a hero. She's a hero because if it wasn't for her videotape, what kind of narrative would we have gotten?
Right.
Exactly.
What would have been the story? Would we have known George Floyd hearing all over the nation? Would everybody, would Black Lives Matter have been marching? Like, what would the story have been? And I just, yeah, that really just really stuck with me. And then seeing the cam, the body cam from the police officers. So now this is definitely a victory. But you know, let me ask this question: what part to you did Black Lives Matter play in this process?
I think,
Here, I'm sorry. You
no,
go
go
first.
ahead. Go ahead.
One of the things that I really liked about this, because Black Lives Matter, I believe it started about 6 years ago with the Eric Garner, I Can't Breathe, the one you were just referencing. And it became a peaceful, because as Black folks, this dates way back to the civil movement. We could not go in there, with guns and everything, because we would have just been killed. So you have to be peaceful. You have to be willing to get beat up. Martin Luther King showed that, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Black Lives Matter first started out, it was mostly like predominantly Black. One of the things I was very happy to see this time around is you'd have places like in Iowa, places in Montana, Black Lives Matter, 98%, 99% white. And so, like I always tell Cornell when I'm on the show, slavery is 155 years removed. There is a residual effect, and it takes time. When you start seeing the majority of the population starting to do what is right, then the movement is gaining steam. So in that case, there was two things. This we've never seen a police brutality that egregious. That was slow torture. That was hard to watch. So you have that, a slow killing in a manner that is novel, and you have a global response. And Black Lives Movement was also instrumental in that as well, taking it to a global, because racial equality is not national, not local. It's a global thing, or it should be. And so, in that aspect, in my opinion, they did a real good job at broadcasting the message.
Yeah.
Making it accessible to everybody.
That's basically what I was going to say, is the fact that it went national and they got out in the streets in every country that there is. And just about every country was broadcasting and showing that they stood behind it, and they wanted everybody to know that they believe that Black Lives Matter, and they protested for it peacefully. Now, people were saying, well, there were riots and everything, but if you watch some of the footage from the riots, it wasn't us that was doing a lot of the breaking into the building.
Exactly.
Everything else. It was those that betrayed it to make it look like it was us. But there was some white people that even video saying, see, it's not the Blacks that's doing this. Black Lives Matter. You need to let it manifest and let it go forward. And I thank the nation, for standing behind it, because I placed a post on Facebook yesterday, and I'm going to actually read it, because this plays a lot in what I'm saying, what we're talking about right now. In the words of Gianna Floyd, his 7-year-old little girl, she told President Biden, "Daddy changed the world," when he spoke at the funeral. Well, that part, when he mentioned that she said that, it actually made me tears fall from my eye, to think that at this time, there's a 6-year-old little girl saying that she realized her daddy's death has changed the world. She see that the world's coming together, and showing that Black lives do matter. And she's recognizing this from such a young age. And I said, I can't breathe until I know my sons and my grandsons can drive and walk down the streets without being shot by someone that was sworn to protect them. I can't breathe until my daughters and my granddaughters can sleep in their bed without fear that a policeman will burst into their home, mistaking their address for someone else's and gunning them down. I can't breathe until the judges give my brothers and sisters the same sentences that they give our white counterparts. Today, I can breathe a little bit easier, but then I still can't fully breathe because justice still have not been served. So, that's my take on how Black Lives Matter.
Awesome. Elaine?
Well, my counterpart, my teammates here, they've pretty much said everything. But I think that I'm definitely in agreement to what they said. But I think that it definitely gave Black people a voice again. you know, and it gave us a reason to unite again. When you think about the unity that was in play, it kind of remind me of the civil rights movement in a sense where it may have started with a few, but at some point we even had white counterparts that even sacrificed their lives as well, or were caught up where their lives were sacrificed, all in the name of justice and doing what's right. So I think it definitely brought attention to the fact that Black people were like, listen, we're not going to continue to just stand by and not have a voice and not do anything. And like my castmate said, it definitely brought everything on a national spectrum. And I think that we are living in a very unique time, that was slightly different from the civil rights movement, where people are loving people for people. So there's always power when you have a connection to something, right? So of course, Black people could relate because we're Black and we have Black fathers and brothers and husbands and stuff like this. But now the way society is, there's a lot of white women that have Black husbands and Black sons, you know. It's more of a norm and a more of a connection between the races that wasn't as apparent during the civil rights movement time. So I think it definitely gave a voice. Like you all said, it produced peaceful protests, not just in Washington, like the march in Washington, or something here in Georgia. It was everywhere. Like even locally, we had one that I attended, and then there's some in DC's, and it just kind of had a popcorn effect. So I think that that was a huge play into the verdict that we saw yesterday, and I think that they're cognitive to know that if the verdict went another way, those same advocates would be back pounding the pavement again.
Absolutely, absolutely, brother Tony. What effect did Black Lives Matter have?
There's a couple of things going on with Black Lives Matter right now, and the families are saying that they have not received any money from Black Lives Matter. So that narrative was out there during this time period also, but you also see a lot of people saying, hey, Black lives do matter, and they join the group, and not a part of the organization, but a part of the movement. And as you can see now, you have the conservatives are saying they had to say that he was guilty, or Black Lives Matter would start tearing up stuff and murdering people and burning down things. But what they fail to realize is that on January the 6th, it wasn't Black Lives Matter that stormed the Capitol. Okay, and what actually needs to happen, the George Floyd bill needs to go through, because the police needs to be held accountable. And there's no way where you can go on a job and not do your job and not get fired. And I've listened to, and also get rid of the union. That union needs to go.
Yes.
Because if a person is wrong, right is right and wrong is wrong. That union needs to go, because they don't care what happens. The first thing they're going to come out and they're going to defend them. And in this case, what we saw in the trial was that his colleagues came out and said that this was wrong. This is not the training that we saw. And everyone says, we got good cops and bad cops. If you have 100 good cops and one bad cop, and you don't report that one bad cop, you still got 101 bad cops.
Absolutely right.
They crossed that blue line.
Absolutely, and you must be a prophet, because you all in my next question. So my next question was going to be about the blue wall crumbling. But first of all, I just have to give it up for Black Lives Matter across the board, because they put the pressure on. Because I wasn't out there marching, but I was doing my part by making noise on my platform. But those young people out there marching and raising Cain, and I still appreciate them for putting that pressure You know, that pressure on to let them know that we were not going to stop. We were going to be heard. And yesterday we got our day in court. So now that brings me to another question. My next question is about the blue wall. We saw the blue wall crumble. We saw where police are known to say don't snitch on each other. Snitch is one of my favorite words because that comes from the Macbeth code of ethics with my homeboys. You know, since we were little, you don't snitch. But then now we're understanding here that this is in a different setting. This is when a man that has the power to exert or use deadly force, you know, and he uses it wrong. And so we start with pots and pans man next to me. What kind of precedence did this case set with the blue wall crumbling?
You know, the right verdict, of course, was rendered yesterday. I'm just not really sure how much is going to change anything, you know, because to me it was obvious. Stevie Wonder could have seen, you know, this crime. It was so horrible that there's no way that you could have defended Derek Chauvin. There was no way. It was done in such a callous manner. So to say that the blue wall is crumbling, you know, systemic racism starts from day one, and it has like invaded our whole society. So do you need to do a review of police training? Do you need to do a review of maybe that policy about snitching? Yeah, I think so. I think that things need to change, you know, because this can't be tolerated. But this is just one case. And so how many cases, like, you know, like all the other people, all the other names, most of those people that were killed by the police, unarmed Black folks, their person that killed them wasn't even indicted. You know, so I'm not really sure this has a groundbreaking resonation that, you know, where change is coming. It is that, unfortunately, eradicating racism is a very slow march in America. And so, yeah, the verdict was a start, but I'm not sure if you're just going to have random wholesale changes all around. I'm a pessimist.
Okay. All right. Margaret?
Well, I like the fact that the officers that they put on the bench to testify, that they stood up for justice on what was right instead of choosing rank in that case. Because many of them, regardless to whether they know that their partner is right or wrong, they still get up there and defend their partner. But we didn't see this in this case, even when those that got up there for the defense, when it came time for the prosecutor to cross-examine them, their defense backfired on them because they said, yeah, we were trained in this way to do this, but what was done is not how we were trained, and it was wrong, wrongfully done. As a first responder, we are taught how long it takes before brain damage sets in. We are the proper and what not to touch and what not to go into, because this can cause fatality or some type of damage to the brain. And if we're taught all of this as a first responder, every first responder is taught this. So if we're taught this in the beginning, he knew exactly what he was doing. So for any of our blue walls to stand there and stand with him, they're totally wrong, and they should be investigated to see what they have done in their past. I don't think that it's totally crumbled the wall, but it did put a mark in the wall so far. But also when it comes down to things like that, we have so many of our older folks that witnessed what went on back in the days where the Ku Klux Klans were in sheets and you didn't know who they were. And they were burning down houses and stuff like that. I spoke with George Steiny's sister a few years back. And if you guys remember who George Steiny was in the case that happened in 1944, where he was put to death because they said he murdered 2 white girls, which it later turned out that he didn't do it, and the lady was going to take that secret to her grave, but they got it out of her before she passed. Conviction was overturned, but what good did that overturn do when he's already been dead? He was not given a full trial. We don't see where any of our white counterparts get the trials that we get. And this is why I'm saying the police reform must happen. It must go forward. We must stand with it. We're going to have to get our older folks to come out and say, hey, we know that you guys went through a lot back in the 60s, but look, this is a new era. We need you guys to come back out. Don't say it don't matter no more, because they got to the point where they got tired and they started saying it don't matter. Get out there, you vote in every election that you can vote in, not just for your president. Vote for every election. Your city council, I don't care who it is, vote for them. Weed out these bads, because the Ku Klux Klans don't hide under sheets no more. They hide in our government systems, out in the opening. They showing us who they are. And the only way that we're going to overturn that is get out there and get them out of those seats that they're in. And then we will start taking the blue wall down.
All right, Elaine Spruill.
Listen, you got to stop putting me behind these 2 geniuses right here, because honey, they saying that, and Tony too. I ain't forget you, Tony, because they're saying everything that I would say. So I'm kind of like, I don't know what to say.
I can beat up anybody's paper tonight.
Yes. Well, I mean, I definitely agree with everything that they just said. I definitely don't think that and you're not a pessimist, pots and pans. You're just a realist, right?
Right.
You know, it's kind of like that thing where they say, okay, I just forgot it. Oh, that you're prejudiced, right? Oh, you're being prejudiced or whatever, which means to prejudge, right? But I'm not prejudging if I'm looking at the history of what has happened to people that look like me. So there's no way I could be prejudiced, because you clearly shown me what you're capable of, right? So know that you're not a pessimist, you're a realist. But anyway, I definitely agree that while this is a victory, this is like a minute crack in a wall that needs to be torn completely down. It definitely starts with reform. It definitely starts with training. There should be some type of accountability or third party involved, where police officers who are seeing injustices feel a sense of safety to report that. And it does start, like Margaret said, at your local government, and really paying attention to these people that you are putting into play. And I know I've been guilty of that myself. I voted at everything, but there's been times when I just don't really know who these judges are that I'm voting for. So I've been trying to be more cautious about reading up on their policies and how they rule, especially in rulings with people of color. So it would definitely have to be an entire reform, as both of them said prior. There's so many cases that they never even come to court. And if they do, they're not indicted. And there's so many things that we just don't see. A lot of things, you know, there's nothing new under the sun. This has been happening from the beginning of time. The only thing is now we have cell phones that have cameras, right? And we have Facebook Live and Instagram. So information is passed through readily, more quickly. So it's something that, unfortunately, I don't really know what that there would be one solution or one case that would change the dynamics of what's being done. It would have to be something that starts with the local government and transcends on, I believe.
All right. Okay. Tony, what do you think about the blue wall crumbling in this case? And is there any precedent?
In this case, they didn't have a choice. When you have the police chief testifying against you, you know you've done. And the act was so horrendous that they had to testify against him. And what is being left out is that there were several complaints against this officer that did not even, they threw it out the court and didn't want the jury to hear it. And out of all the complaints that he had, there were two of them that the judge was going to let in, and the prosecution's case was so good they didn't even need it. As far as the cameras, now we have cameras, but they will make you believe that what you saw in the camera, that really didn't happen. So we got a long way to go, and it's important that we vote, and not just vote to say we're voting, but to do some research. Because in the county where I'm dealing at, yes, we vote because of the color. Yeah, he a brother. Well, you better hold him accountable like anyone else. And the laws, as far as immunity, anytime the police does something, that needs to go away. Because you can't go on your job and mess up real bad and say, well, you know, we're gonna give him paid leave and he can come back. No. And not one person on here can go on their job and mess up and say, well, I'm gonna just go home, go on a 2-week vacation while you do an investigation, then come back to work like nothing happened.
Exactly.
So, but we just have to, before America can go forward, we need to face our past. And everyone was like, you know, they'll say, well, oh, that was the past. We need to get over it. We need to remember now, a lot of things just started changing when we were born. So we haven't been out of this thing that long.
Look at George as well.
Fighting, and also Malcolm X. So, and after they left, who took the place of them as a leader? And if we think about it, who's helping us now, and who's the leader of the Black community now? Who's the face of the Black community? We don't have it. And like we said, there's a lot of cases that won't even get this far, because there was a shooting just right after, well, during the trial, the verdict.
Yeah.
So it's going to continue until the Justice Department and Congress and Senate say, look here, we need to make some changes. And Bill Maher said it perfectly. It won't be any changes until they start shooting their kids. And when when that happens, then things are going to change. But as long as it's one of us, it's probably one of them Black Lives Matter kids or whatever. But change is necessary.
Thank you. And the reason I asked that question is because that was Madaria Arredondo. He's over some 800 police officers, and he was looked at as like one of the most high-profile witnesses in this case. You know, and he said that when he talked about, this is the first time I ever learned what the prone position was. That's one thing about watching court and stuff like it, because you don't know, but you learn from these other experts, you know. And so I learned what the prone position was, and then he mentioned that, which is on your stomach, like, and he said, when you're in the prone position, the handcuff behind your back, said, in no way, shape, or form is anything that is our policy. It's not part of our training, and it's certainly not part of our ethics or values. And so, to me, that was him distancing himself from Derek Chauvin. And like we were saying, because it was so horrific, nobody wanted to be associated with, I call him a sociopath, we ain't call him a monster. Nobody wanted to be associated with him. And so before I start talking, I want to say a couple things. We're going to ask a couple questions about the trial and the people in the trial, but I just want to ask this one question. How do you feel about Derek Chauvin never showing any emotion, no remorse.
I feel that he did what he did. He meant to do what he did. So why should he show remorse? You can look at clearly at the video that the young lady had when she had it close up on his face, basically. It almost like he had a smirk on his face knowing what he was doing. So to me, him not showing, if he had shown some remorse, the first thing would have came in my mind would have been that he was faking it. That I saw no remorse there because he didn't have remorse while he was doing what he was doing.
For me, it was enraging, but not surprising. Not surprising at all, because since we've been here, what white people who have done injustices against Black people have shown any remorse? You know, it's kind of like that saying, when they show you who they are, believe them, right? So this is what we've seen since we've been here. You know, that this is the norm, and in order to have remorse of hurting someone, you would have to view them as a human being. And since
Agree.
we've been here, we have not been viewed as human beings or equal from the beginning, right? So it's disheartening. It was enraging to watch. It definitely made me angry, but it wasn't anything atypical to what we've seen since we've been here from the beginning of time. And for me, you know, like you said, Margaret, I definitely would have thought that it was fake if he tried to say he was remorseful. But I'd rather you change your behavior than to concentrate on the remorse, me personally, because the behavior needs to change. So I'm hopeful that even though, like we all agree, this is just a crack in the blue wall, that this will be a signal that you're not automatically going to get away with this, you know, or be in the beginning of that. But it wasn't anything atypical, because in order to be remorseful, you have to have a soul. You have to be compassionate. You have to be empathetic. You have to believe that all humans are created equal. And that's not the basis of what the United States has shown.
All right. Woo! Drop the mic. All right. Tony Lothario.
Yeah. Well, I agree with her 1000%, because as we all know, we were deemed to be less than humans. And the look on his face was, how dare you question my authority? And when he had his hand in his pocket, that was it. It was like, how dare you question me? And I'm going to get off. It doesn't matter. I'm in the police union. When this is over, I'm going to go home, and then they'll call me back. But what happened is, they did the what they usually do, send them off, and then they'll question the next day until the police chief saw the video. And that's when things changed. And that's probably when he said, you know what, let me get in contact with the attorney general and make a plea deal. And we need to remember also, when the laws were not made for us. So a lot of things need to change. And the first thing that needs to change is the laws. And then they need to, like I keep saying, the immunity for the police, they need to get rid of it. What they need to do is make them get insurance, just like you got insurance on your car. You're not going to run somebody off the road, because guess what? You're going to protect your car, even if they come in your lane. The same thing needs to happen to them. Make them get insurance. And if something happens, it comes from their pension or wherever. And I guarantee you, they'll think before they shoot.
That's another thing along the line of what Tony was just saying that I was thinking about as well. in cases where they allow them to retire when they feel that they got something coming up against them or they know that they're guilty about something. Don't allow them to retire, because with them retiring, they're only losing. That's to keep, in order to keep their pension. If they are fired, they lose their pension. So they allow them to retire before they bring a verdict against them. Don't do that. Go ahead and bring that full verdict and let them know that if you're found guilty, your pension is going to be swiped away from you anyway. Yeah, we got to get workman's comp insurance on our employees if we hire somebody. So why can't they get the same thing? I agree with him.
All right. Pots and pans, my man, pots and pans. What do you feel about the no emotion, the sociopath? I call him a sociopath behavior of Eric Chauvin.
I think one of the things like psycho-sociopaths have is they have a lack of empathy. And when the world met Derek Chauvin, we saw a lack of empathy. You saw the people begging for him to get off his neck. You heard the man pleading. The man was already subdued. And the same expression that you saw in the courtroom is what you saw when he had his hands in his pocket, nonchalant, and he had his knees dead in the middle of that man's neck. So the only thing I'll say is that he knew he was going to jail. I don't think he was surprised, you know. And I think what one of the reasons why he went to jail is, in my old age and wisdom, I just see that a lot of people, especially Black and white folks, see things differently. The makeup of that jury also may have had a big part. It was 4 Blacks, 2 multi-culture, multiracial other folks, and six folks. So you have an egregious crime, and then you have a racially diverse jury. Because, you know, when you have Black crimes or racial inequalities and you try them up in front of all white juries, we lose. Like, we always lose, it seems like, because I'm seeing that, you know, Black folks, white folks, we see things very, very differently. You know, and I just don't, you know, I think we're changing. You know, we have to see the things the way that we see them just to exist in this world, and they see them from a place of privilege, yet they don't really want to acknowledge that. Of course, you know, I'm not talking about everybody, you know, nobody's a monolith, but yeah, I think the racial makeup of the jury also, you got 4 Black folks on a jury and a crime as egregious as that. Like, there's no way that jury could have been hung. It was either one way or the other. And to me, it was blatant.
And I said that because I guess whenever we look at people and the things they do, we always gauge them by ourselves, you know, and we always think about ourselves and the kind of compassion we have. And I've said this, I've made this illustration many times. I swerve to miss a squirrel, you know. For me, I'm trying to give the squirrel a fighting chance. I'm not gonna hit a tree. To all the animal lovers out there, I'm just tell you the truth now. Y'all might get mad, hit the tree now, but I'm gonna try to give the squirrel a fighting chance. You know, if I can stop, if I can swerve, I'm gonna go around him. I'm not gonna just run him over because I can, you know. Yeah. And but to see, it was heartbreaking, man, to hear this man cry out, a grown man, you know, 46 years old, to hear a grown man crying for his life and then crying for his mother.
Dead mother.
And to hear that, to me, it was heart-wrenching. And to know that this is your last journey on earth, your last day on earth. I spent it with you on videotape, and you didn't die with dignity. You died with your hands behind your back, with someone's knee on your neck, restricting your air supply, begging for your life. When your hands were free, you could have fought, but you chose to do the right thing and not fight. You know, you chose to do the right thing and not fight, and yet it still didn't end up in your favor.
So it makes you want to, I don't mean to cut you off, Cornell, but, you know, it makes you, and that's why with that Maxine Walters comment, as a Black person, I know exactly what she meant, because I'm here to tell you right now that if I die at the hands of racial, by the police, and I'm complying, and I get shot, and hey, I say burn the whole city down, because sometimes that's what, and it sounds violent, but guess what? America was built on violence.
Yeah.
It was built on racial equality. And so what has peaceful protest? We'll try and be peaceful, but guess what? Still no indictment, still no conviction. So you know what? Those buildings are insured. George Floyd's life wasn't insured. It wasn't even enough for a cop to take your foot off his neck. So if everybody knew it, if that had gone backwards and they'd have found him not guilty, America would have been still burning. And you know what? Maybe rightfully so.
And one thing that really got to me when the doctor said he could not breathe, and then it was like his knuckles were trying to breathe for him. Now that was the strongest part of the testimony. And if you're thinking and you're like, okay, I'm breathing through my nose and I'm at a point where I can't even breathe, but I'm trying to breathe through my knuckles, that was very powerful right there. Yes. With the testimony.
Yes. There was many points in that I actually cried, because I'm watching it and I'm wondering, how can somebody be so to hurt and be so right at the same time, that they can take somebody through that? And he showed where he was trying to put his hand on the vehicle in order to breathe through it. That hurt. It hurts me. So I can imagine what the bystanders that were standing there videotaping and telling them to get him up was going through at that point. I can feel their emotions when they were on the jury along with them. And like Princess is saying that the cops were saying about the delirium, only one cop out of all of them that stood there said, get him up. And he looked at him like he was stupid. Like, you're supposed to be standing with me. How are you going to tell me to get him up? But even at that point, as another fellow officer, when you know what's about to happen, you should have took more action than saying, get him up. He should have intervened. I mean, there were so many points in what Dr. Tobin showed on the different points of how he was breathing, the way he was breathing, the different angles that he was trying to get his breath out until he just couldn't get it out no more. And he showed where one side of him completely shut down, and he still was trying. It's just painful to have watched. But I stood there and I watched it because I didn't want to hear somebody tell me what was going on. I wanted to see it for myself, because I wanted to be able to form my opinion for myself. Well, I formed my opinion in the beginning that he was guilty, but I wanted to see to what extent that he was thinking when he was doing this. And I formed my opinion. Like I said, the defense could not get up there and say anything after watching those videos that could have deterred me and told me differently that he was not guilty. He was totally guilty from what the prosecutors laid out already. I don't care what they came back with.
I concur. I concur with that. And I said, to myself, I couldn't, it would, to me, when I compare heinous crimes in my time period living, we hear about the things that happened with Roots, and we hear about things that happened in slavery. But I remember the brother getting dragged to death behind the car. You remember that, behind the truck, the pickup truck, they dragged him to death. And so I look at this crime as commensurate to that, but this was something that I witnessed. I witnessed this. And so it tells me the dark, evil, and like Elaine was saying, no soul. that some people have, almost like a devil incarnate walking the earth, because that was evil. But Jenna Scurry, who was the 911 dispatcher, as a matter of fact, she said that, you know, they sat on him so long, sitting on his back. She said that she thought the tape was frozen.
Right.
Yeah, she thought the tape was frozen because how long they want the man back. And so then she said, I don't care if they call me a snitch or not. She called the supervisory sergeant on them. And I just think just the nature of this crime, man. Genevieve Hansen, the EMT, the one that was on the street telling them, you know, let me take a pulse. Let me get the pulse. Let me get the pulse. And you know, to see these people get up on the stand and cry, like what were you saying about Dr. Tobin earlier? I would have looked at that and missed that point several times. But when I look back at it after he said that and watched the man extend his hand and have his hand closed, he was trying to open up a passageway to breathe. He had abrasions on his face because he was trying to push himself up with his face. And there was no other verdict but guilty. And all the time that they can give him, he needs to get. Al Sharpton them said yesterday, we're not happy because the man's going to jail. Man, I don't feel sorry for that dude. I don't feel sorry for him because, like, what he did to that to George Floyd, to me, a person like that don't need to be in society. No, that person doesn't need to be in society at all. And so what about Princess Gadsden said something again. She said they need to get rid of the knee on the neck maneuver. Yeah, how y'all feel about that? Because it is one that they employ. How do you guys feel about the knee on the neck maneuver?
I think it's wrong. Because if we're taught where the pressure points are and we're taught about so many pressure points in the neck, why would we employ that maneuver?
Anybody else?
Well, what they were saying as far as the knee in the neck, it's allowed until you get that person under control, and then you're supposed to get off of them. That's it. That's what they were saying. Once you subdue them, that's it. You got them handcuffed and you got control of the situation. Get off of them.
Then there's also a point on that neck that you're not supposed to get onto, which is here. If you get onto that point right there, you're about to inflict some type of damage on that person. If you're going to put your on that neck, you go down here. That way you're subduing them and you're not causing any damages that can be detrimental to them.
Did they really need the knee on the neck to subdue George Floyd?
No.
They did not need it.
He was already handcuffed.
He had already complied, so it was, just unnecessary roughness. Like you all said before.
In fact, he sat there and waited for them to come. He didn't have to.
There wasn't no fighting George Floyd.
No,
there wasn't no. I mean, we done seen some unruly people straight up that you said, oh yeah, they had to tase him. But I mean, as far this guy was begging for his life, they come out with the guns blazing. Come up to him, and if you saw the defense's tape, and I saw what the guy was doing, he was trying to put everybody to sleep with his final argument. But the defense tape looks like they did such a great job. They took the sound out, But if you saw the original film, the body cam, it was like horrific. They came in, no de-escalation, They came in and they excited the situation with guns drawn, and this man's just begging.
And Chauvin was not even the original officer on the scene.
Right.
No one called him to come. He voluntarily went up there. He was never called. The officers told the dispatch that they had it under control when they first called it back in, that they were there.
But what I would say to that is what you do in the dark will come to light. So all of those instances prior to this, when they were given the warnings, trying to give complaints, it all came to light in this situation right here.
Mm-hmm.
So
This wasn't the first time.
Absolutely. Now, this wasn't the first time. That wasn't the first rodeo. Absolutely, it wasn't the first rodeo. You're not.
And sadly, it won't be the last.
No, it won't be. But at least now they know they'll be held accountable. You know. So what do we tell our kids about protocol for getting stopped by the police?
Well, I was talking to a couple of my coworkers, and I said, "Well, what you need to understand." And we were talking about the Confederate flag, and we had a conversation, and that's what needs to happen. You need to have a conversation with someone, and then you can see when you see the Confederate flag, you don't think nothing of it. When I see someone with the Confederate flag, I'm figuring which way I need to go in my car. Okay. When I get pulled over, I said one thing about black males, we have the conversation. You've never had to have the conversation. The conversation is, and for me now, I have everything I need is right above the sun visor. I'm not digging for anything. Everything is in one little packet. Only thing I'll have to get is my license. Here, and by the time they get to the car, it's right there and it's ready to go. I said, you don't have to have that conversation. And also, when you're inside the store, you don't get followed like we do. And I said, sometimes I'll tell you what I do. I'll have my clothes on that I cut the grass in, and I'll go buy like a high dollar item. I'll go in the store and I'll get ignored. I said, but if I go back with a bow tie on, and then it's Mr., and I just wait, and then I tell them, you know what? You didn't help me when I was here the first time. There's no need helping me now. So I said, and we had a conversation. And me and my coworker, he was from Columbia. He said, I used to watch the flag on top of the building, ride by it. It didn't mean anything to me about it. But now that I see your point and what it means to you, I said, when I think of it, I think of back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, when the Ku Klux Klan used to ride up and burn people's houses down. I said, there's nothing that I've ever seen that was good about it. So, but it's we just need to have that conversation.
I've gotten to the point where I tell my kids, my granddaughter she just got her first car. She's 18 years old. Put a camera in your car. If you get pulled over for whatever reason, not only relying on that dash cam that's in your car, turn your cell phone on live. Put it on live. Make sure that you're recording everything and turn it towards that officer so that they can see that it's on. Comply. Keep your hands in hand sight at all times. Keep your items close to where, like Tony just said, where you don't have to go digging for nothing. And if you have to look for something, ask for permission before you do it first. And make sure that you look into that camera when you're asking for permission. Be visible about everything that you're doing. Not saying that this is stopping everything, because we've had incidents where shootings have happened on camera. Like the young man that got pulled over with his girlfriend in the car, and she was recording. And he told the officer, I have a gun in my car. And that was the last thing he got out of his mouth before they shot him. He hadn't done anything. But at least we have some type of accountability from those cameras now. We didn't have that back in the days. We got them now, use them to the best of our ability, invest in that camera in your car. We don't have to just worry about our sons out there on that street. We have to worry about our daughters as well and our grandchildren that's coming up beyond. And don't think that this landmark verdict is going to change a whole lot. That just means we have to be more careful in our driving and make sure that we pull over in an area that's well lit. If you in a dark area and you're being pulled, call 911. Tell the dispatcher, I am driving such a car. My license plate is such and such. I'm being followed by blue lights. Please inform them. I will not stop until I get to a safe, lit place. That way it's on tape. If that cop does anything other than that, he can be held accountable for it. Or she.
Okay. Thank you, Margaret. My man, Pots and Pans. What's the protocol? What do we tell our kids is protocol for when they get stopped by the police?
I mean, the same thing. We've had this conversation before, George Floyd. To be black in America means there's a different set of rules. So it's up to you to make sure you don't get shot. You know what I mean? So like Tony was saying before, have everything present. Make sure that your hands are visible. I like keep them on the steering wheel. Watch your tone of voice. Because you can never win. You can never win while you're out there. You will always lose every single time. One of the things that when Sandra Bland, and you never want to blame a victim, but you just can't get in a back and forth. You know what I mean? You just can't get in a back and forth with a cop, because if somebody loses, it's not going to be the cop. It's going to be the civilian, the black civilian. And then you got all the other stereotypes that come with black folks. She was angry, he was unruly. So yeah, you just got to make sure you put the onus on yourself, because if somebody gets shot, it's going to be you. So be compliant, don't run, don't resist. If you have to fight, you fight it in court. You don't fight it out there on the street.
Princess Gadsden said she agreed. We do have a different set of rules. Elaine India, what's the protocol? It's coming to you. It's coming to you, Elaine India.
Yeah. All the things that everyone has shared, but I've definitely had those conversations with my children as well. And I think of a time where my oldest daughter and I got stopped, and I was on my way to take her somewhere, and we literally just pulled out of my street, and not even 500 feet. Well, I saw this red car like speeding by, and when you see an officer, you're supposed to get in the other lane. So I got in the lane behind that car because one officer already had someone pulled over, and I saw other officers there. So the officer mistaken me for the red car as far as the speeding, and pulled me over and went through the protocol of, do you know why you were pulled over and things of that nature. And I said, well, fortunately, he looked like me. Let me start by saying that. I was very fortunate that he looked like me. And I said, no, sir, officer, I don't know why I was pulled over. And he explained, we caught you going 60 in a 30 or whatever. And I said, sir, with all due respect, unless I'm Jeff Gordon, there's no way I could have accelerated my car just coming out of this driveway that's like 50 feet away, and accelerated to 600 feet. I said, I can show you my license to see where I live to verify that. But I was not going at that speed. And he thought about it and said, now that I think about it, wasn't the car, wasn't the color of your car. And I said, I can tell you the license plate, because it was a license plate that had a name on it. If you really want to get that person, I have kind of photographic memory, so I can tell you who it was. But my daughter, as soon as we stopped, who was on the passenger's seat, immediately put her hands on the dash, because we had that conversation, and she had watched the movie The Hate U Give. She had read the book, watched the movie The Hate U Give, and that's kind of how we had that conversation, based on what she had read and what she had saw, and applied it to real life. And I explained to her that that conversation probably would not have went as well if I had an officer that did not look like me, right? And it was very fortunate in the situation that even with that, I had an officer who was just really just doing their job and was understanding. But the key in it was, and I didn't get a ticket, thank God. But the key in it was the respect factor. Even though we all know that we've had people who have complied, who have been respectful, have followed the rules to the T and did not make it home. Like you all said before, there's already this false narrative that we're angry, right? And we're non-compliant and everything else negative that they say about us. So the key is, like you all said, is to have your things in an easy place where you can reach, have your hands visible, and if you do have to have a conversation, remain calm, remain respectful, despite what you may receive, from the officer. But those are the conversations that I've had with my children and like you said, Margaret, at one point it was just the Black men predominantly. But now we have seen that Black women are at just the great risk as Black men are. So none of us are safe in any situation. Unfortunately, you can tell your children about these things and have these conversations. But again, you can do all of these things and still not make it home. So like Margaret said, that's a conversation that I've had is as soon as you get stopped, call me. So it's recorded, or go live or do something so someone is hearing the conversation or seeing the transactions that are taking place.
Yeah. I got one thing I want to say about that. Based on what Elaine just said about the gentleman that stopped her, the officer that stopped her was one of us. People need to comply regardless to what their skin color is. Because if you remember seeing from Boys to Men, if you ever seen Boys to Men, where a Black officer responded to
Boys in the Hood.
Boys in the Hood, yeah. Sorry.
With Morris Chestnut, of course. I seen that, girl.
When he was telling the officer, he was like, was something wrong? He said, yeah, and if you don't know what it is, there's nothing I can say. But we have so many of those as well that are racist.
Absolutely.
Against people. So we have, the first thing they see is a young Black person, and if they're not dressed the way that they want them to be dressed or looking the type that they want them to be looking, then they automatically put a
label.
Just a label on them. Thank you. They automatically put a label on them. That could be the best well-dressed young man at any other time, very well spoken, most educated. But at this particular time, he felt like dressing down, or he likes to have long dreads in his hair. That don't mean that he's educated, smart, law-abiding, a citizen that's driving that car. Treat him as if that was one of his counterparts that you just pulled out of Yale's parking lot. But we got so many of us that label us as well. So we have to comply and be mindful of how we speak to each one of our officers and be, respectful to all of them, regardless of how they're speaking to us. Don't let their anger towards us be our death sentence.
What's that?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Tony, you answered that already. You answered that first, right? Or did you answer that question?
I already answered. I was first.
You were first. and so I'm gonna go ahead with the last question, guys. And I know everybody's happy about that. Last question tonight. I just
Lady Lynn go first now.
Lane, all right, I'm gonna let Lane go first.
Tony, how you gonna put me on the spot, man? I thought we was here. I'm soaking in all the wisdom now. Come on. Y'all making it easy for me. Now you put me on the spot.
I can't leave this show without talking about how masterful the prosecutor Blackwell was. And yeah, I gotta give it up for him. Blackwell was masterful. For me, when he came back and they got to actually close, because the prosecution goes first, the defense went, but the defense told so much lies. I mean, they told lies, lies, lies that he actually was able to come back and refute the lies that the defense was telling. And I think the defense set a trap for themselves. The defense filibustered for so long too. I was getting tired, but it was like confusion, trying to confuse you, trying to confuse the jury. And for me, when he said the problem wasn't that George Floyd's heart was too big, talking about being enlarged. He said the problem was that Derek Chauvin's heart was too small. For me, I was thinking that it was Dr. Tobin. I was thinking it was the 9-year-old precious baby that took the stand and that was cognizant of this man crying for his life. I was thinking that it was Darnella Frazier who said that she was having sleepless nights because she didn't help him, but Darnella couldn't have helped him because there was a police officer at the back with his hand on his gun. And if anybody had crossed that line, unless he got blitzed, you know, somebody was gonna die because he was gonna shoot somebody. But when Prosecutor Blackwell said that, to me, it was like he hit the case with Thor's hammer. What did you feel about that comment that Prosecutor Blackwell made, or what did you feel was the nail in the coffin?
I think he was very strategic in how he came at the events and kind of used what they said, you know, and kind of regurgitated it back to them. And I think that what he did, as we all discussed, was he tried to paint a picture of empathy for George Floyd rather than Derek, you know, who lacked empathy. So I think that was a key moment, as you said, Cornell, when he made that statement, because it humanized George Floyd, right? And kind of showed that Derek just was not capable of having empathy for him or anyone else. So I think that the prosecutor did an excellent job of painting that picture of just giving us a realistic picture of what it means to have compassion for a human life. Okay, you can provide structure and discipline and make sure people are adhering to the laws or whatever you need to do as a police officer. But if you lack compassion and empathy, then that's going to impact the way you handle people and the way you do your job. So I think when he said that, it was a way to really just put a human, even though we saw the human face, it was a way to put human feelings and empathy of the fact that as a result of this officer not doing his job, this man lost his life and didn't have any remorse about it. So like Margaret said, if you let him go, he's gonna pretty much do the same thing again. Because in order to have remorse about something, you have to believe that you were doing something wrong. And he didn't believe he was doing anything wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Margaret?
I agree completely with Elaine, what she just said. I feel that at that point, he put a dehumanization on Chauvin. He's shown that in order to have a human heart and be empathetic, you would have had some type of compassion. You would have not been able to carry out what you carried out for as long as you carried it out. You're saying that this man died as a result of his heart. His heart didn't have nothing to do with the way he died. So that statement was perfect in what he said. I love the fact that whatever they came back with, he kept his cool. I like the way that he just stayed smooth, and he didn't do a double jeopardy on nothing. He kept it straight to the point. And if they came back and tried to wiggle out of it, that's not what I asked you. What I asked you, I asked a specific question. I want a specific answer. And he kept them on that line. And I was like, they couldn't have asked for a better prosecutor at that point.
Tony Gibbs.
I totally agree. And but one thing I have to say is he did a great job, and he painted the picture, and he painted it a perfect picture. There was no flaws in that in the prosecution. And other thing that got me was the young guy that took the $20 bill, when he said, "Look here, I wish I had just accepted the $20. I told the manager, hey, take it out my pay." And the one person, the elephant in the room that no one's heard from, was the manager, because he kept sending that young guy back out there to get the $20. Then he sent the other co-workers out there, but you never heard from him. $20 is not worth a man's life.
My man, Pots and Pans, Lothario Vanish. Bring it on home for us. Bring it on home for us, brother.
Compassion and empathy are part of a policeman's job. So you are sworn to protect and to serve, and that's exactly right. A lot of times, supposedly, a lot of us black males, we have enlarged hearts, like a birth defect. So, but that's not what killed him. What he did very well was he made the whole world say, "Hey, believe what you saw. You saw a man being slowly, viciously, compassionless killed. So believe your eyes." And that same expression that you saw while he was down there for 9 minutes and however many seconds, if you look right there, nothing has changed, because this man lacks empathy. Not only was his crime illegal, but it was immoral, and he should never see the light of day again. So he made sure that the criminal was highlighted, and that the criminal was he was on trial. So I think he did a good job as well.
Thank you, brother. I just agree with everything that's been said, and glad for the verdict that came forth. I just want to thank once again Tony Gibbs, Elaine Spruill, Elizabeth Dennis, my man Pots and Pans, Lothario Vanish, for taking time out of their busy schedule. Come here and like the young people say, chop it up with us tonight. And I really, see, I'm kind of cool too. I'm still cool, but that's right. I ain't wearing no skinny jeans though, because I ain't skinny. But yeah,
hey, none of us skinny tomorrow.
We just and we just hope that people that are viewing tonight, we want to thank Princess Gadsden. Tony, I'm getting ready to call your name, but you here because you did make a comment too. But yeah, Princess Gadsden, we want to thank her for chiming in and watching the show, and all of you. We have some people that watch the show, but they didn't say anything. We want to thank them for viewing, and for the people that are gonna view, make sure you tell your kids, give them protocol for when they get pulled over by the police. And like you heard on the show tonight, you're not gonna win. You don't have the power. They got the bullets, they got the gun,
got authority.
They got the authority. Live the fight another day. You don't have to be hardcore. You don't have to be bad. You don't have to come off on them. Just comply. If you are wronged, then take them to a court of law. But live to see that day. And that's all we have for tonight. We're gonna roll out on that one. You were in the right place at the right time, and hey, we got some new move music to take it out tonight. How about that? That's right. That's right. Michael Brightman give me. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Michael Brightman give me so much problems about my music, Bam Mab. You know, he says it's annoying. So we changed it up a little bit tonight. That's right. That's right. That's right.
Hey, I appreciate y'all. Y'all have a good one.
You do
Have
the
a great
same.
one. It was a pleasure, you guys.
Good night.
Well.
Dude.